Vivarta Vedanta. The Doctrine of Illusory Appearance. By what he lovingly said as Nam Ulaham Kandalal, because we see the world, the opening words of the first verse of Uladu Napadu, Ramana Acharya, who teaches what is most beneficial for living beings, revealed only the protective Vivarta Vedanta, the doctrine of illusory appearance, to be true, thereby setting aside all other doctrines.
Sadhu Om.
Because we see the world are the first words of verse 1 of Uladu Narpadu, Bhagavan's 40-verse poem on the nature of reality. Though his experience of the truth can only be adequately expressed by the doctrine of Ajata, Bhagavan Sri Ramana uses only the doctrine of Vivarta for his teachings. Assuming a cause and its effect, religions generally teach that God has created individual souls and the world. Some teach the doctrine of Advaita, duality, which postulates that all these three, God, souls, and the world, will eternally remain separate. Others teach the doctrine of Vishishtadvaita, qualified non-duality, which postulates that though duality now prevails, the souls in the world will at some later time merge into union with God. Others again teach the doctrine of Advaita, non-duality, which postulates that even now, though they seem to be separate, these three are in truth mere appearances and are none other than the one reality. And many other doctrines are also taught by various religions. Aspirants may be graded into 4 levels of maturity: dull, manda, medium, madhyama, ripe, tivra, and fully ripe, ati tivra. Those of the first 2 grades will readily accept the doctrine of Advaita, or Vishishtadvaita. The doctrine of Vivarta is recommended to explain the standpoint of Advaita, i.e., to explain how the world appearance, its seer, and the seer's knowledge of the appearance all come into existence simultaneously, unconditioned by cause and effect. However, since this accepts the appearance of the world, souls, and God, it is only a working hypothesis to help aspirants. The doctrine of Ajata, on the other hand, never accepts even the appearance of this trinity, but proclaims that the one self-shining reality alone exists eternally and without modification. Ajata is therefore the highest of all doctrines, and it is only suitable for the fully ripened aspirants. Since the minds of mature aspirants, Tivra Adhikari, cannot be satisfied either with Ajata, the truth of which they cannot fully grasp, or with other doctrines such as duality, Dvaita, which appear to them to be untrue, and which they therefore cannot accept, Sri Bhagavan sets aside all other such doctrines and teaches only Vivarta, which is suited to the maturity of their mind.
All that is perceived by the mind was already within the heart. Know that all perceptions are a reproduction of past tendencies now being projected outside through the 5 senses. Self itself is seen due to Maya, appearing as the many names and forms of this universe, but it does not act as the cause or the doer, creating, sustaining, and destroying this universe. Do not ask, why does self, as if confused, not know the truth that it is itself which is seen as the world? If instead you inquire, to whom does this confusion occur? Then it will be discovered that no such confusion ever existed for self.
Sadhu Om.
Through self-inquiry, the confused doubter, who is the ego, will lose his identity and be drowned in self. It will then be discovered that neither ignorance nor confusion ever existed for self, but only for the non-existent ego.
Self appearing as the world is just like a rope seeing itself as a snake. Just as the snake is, on scrutiny, found to be ever non-existent, so is the world found to be ever non-existent, even as an appearance. When considered, is it not that self-deluding thought alone that creates in the rope the appearance of the snake, which cannot be other than that thought I self, as if it were different to the rope, sustains its appearance as the cause of its suffering, and will eventually destroy its appearance by means of clear self-knowledge gained by turning within to know who am I.
Sadhu Om.
In this verse, the repeated words, that thought itself, denote the mind or ego, the primal thought I, which thinks all other thoughts. This thought comes into being due to avichara, non-investigation, or failure to attend only to itself. Thereby creating the appearance of this world, it continues to exist due to avichara, thereby sustaining the appearance of this world, and it will finally cease to exist due to vichara, investigation, or attending only to itself, thereby destroying the appearance of this world. Therefore, this world is not created by God, who is our real self, but only by our ajnana, or ignorance of self, which is a result of avichara, pramada, or self-negligence.
The seed and its sprout seem to cooperate, each being in turn the cause of the other, and yet each effect also destroys its cause. In fact, the effect is not really produced by the cause, since both are produced only by the imagination of the ignorant mind. Only the unmai, isness, being, truth, or reality, that is consciousness, is Atma, self. The world is merely a distortion, that is that consciousness. That is, it is nothing other than that consciousness appearing in a distorted form. If a rope were conscious, to be seen as a snake, would it need anyone who is other than it?
In the analogy of the rope and the snake, though the rope and the snake are one, the person who wrongly sees the rope as a snake is separate from both of them. However, in the case of the reality and the world appearance, not only are the reality and the world one, but we who wrongly see the reality as the world are not separate from either of them, because the reality that is seen as the world is only self, which is consciousness, and we who see it thus are none other than that same consciousness. Therefore, by asking the rhetorical question, if a rope were conscious to be seen as a snake, would it need anyone who is other than it? Sri Bhagavan is emphasizing the truth of absolute non-duality, Advaita, or non-difference, Abheda.
Has self changed its nature of still being into that of motion, or how else has this world come into existence? Self has never undergone change or movement. This world seems to exist solely because of ignorance, which is itself false.
This same idea continues to be illustrated and developed in the following 8 verses.
When, in the view of the one indivisible space, even the pot has no separate existence, is it not foolish to say that the space inside the pot moves with the movements of the pot? Similarly, when, in the plenitude of self-consciousness, body and world cannot even exist, being non-self and incomplete, it is ridiculous to say that self moves because of the movements of the mutable body and world. Though self, which is ever still because of its wholeness, seems to move with the movements of the unsteady mirror. The mind, it is never the real self that moves, but only its reflection, the mind. If it is asked, how did the delusive upadis, attributes such as mind, intellect, chittam, etc., appear to arise for the Supreme Self, which is one without a second? Then it must be replied that they are seen to arise only in the view of the ignorant jiva, and that in reality no attribute has ever arisen for self. Know thus,
there is no experience of the upadis in jnana, and therefore they appear only to the ignorant and never to the jnani. Having heard this, the ignorant still ask the jnani how their wrong outlook has come into being, but they should understand that a jnani can never admit that upadis exist for self, and that it is therefore the responsibility of the ignorant to discover for themselves how and for whom the upadis appear. Thus, Bhagavan often used to counter-question his devotees and say, "You claim that upadis have come into being and are real, and so you alone must find out what they are, and how, from where, and to whom they appear." This illustrates why the doctrine of Vivarta, i.e. simultaneous creation, is suited to the questioner's point of view, which only admits ajata, i.e. non-creation.
a spark of fire can fly out only from a fireball of limited size, and it could not do so from a fire which is unlimited and all-pervading. Similarly, it is impossible for jivas and the world to arise as tiny separate entities, I and this, from the Supreme Self, which is the unlimited whole.
Sadhu Om.
This means that the world, God, and jivas appear only in the view of the jiva, who is a false reflection of self, and that, in the supreme viewpoint of self, there is no creation at all.
The body exists only in the view of the mind, which is deluded and drawn outwards by the power of Maya. In the clear view of self, which is a single vast space of consciousness, there is no body at all, and it is therefore wrong to call self Dehai, or Kshetrajna, the owner or knower of the body.
Sadhu Om.
The truth that Sri Bhagavan reveals in this verse is that in the Bhagavad Gita, the terms kshetra and kshetrajya, the field, body, and the knower of the field, soul, and deha and dehi, the body, and the owner of the body, are not the truth but are only figurative expressions, upakara varta, that Sri Krishna compassionately said, knowing that if it were told in any other way, it would not be clear to the mind that is ignorant of self.
Unless the body is taken to be I, otherness, the world of moving and unmoving objects cannot be seen. Hence, because otherness, the creatures and their creator, does not exist, it is wrong to call self the witness.
Sadhu Om.
Descriptions of self as the witness of the individual soul, jiva sakshi, or the witness of everything, sarva sakshi, which can be found in some sacred texts, are not true but are only figurative, upakara, because only when other things are known would the one who knows them be a witness of them. Since self does not know anything in the state of absolute oneness, which is devoid of any other thing, to what can it be a witness? Therefore, describing self as a witness is incorrect.
The world does not exist apart from the body. The body does not exist apart from the mind. The mind does not exist apart from consciousness. And consciousness does not exist apart from self, which is existence.
Sadhu Om.
Therefore, it can be concluded that everything is self and that nothing but self exists.